I don't think pain or loss or suffering ever gets easier. I've gone to a lot of funerals for kids, and I cry every time. I often think that the moment I stop crying is when I should stop doing what I'm doing. My name is Hoffman. I am a clinical social worker. I've been working at Lutheran Children's Hospital for almost 11 years, 9 of which I've spent specifically in the pediatric hematology oncology clinic, working with children who have chronic or very serious health diseases such as sickle cell disease or cancer. I also help coordinate our bereavement program at the Children's Hospital, which means that I follow families for up to 2 years who have had children die through a variety of reasons, trauma, accidents, or chronic illnesses such as my cancer patients. Because of the nature of the diseases that we work with and the reality that there could be death involved or a loss, whether that's an amputation or a loss of not going to school or going to church or being involved in their daily life because they're so sick or they're stuck in the hospital for weeks or months. It opens the door to a lot of conversations, and as a believer and being called to bring light into a dark place, I feel really privileged that families on their own, and often kids, that I can ask questions that then lead to conversations of saying, how are you feeling? How is this affecting you? I wonder what you might think about God in an instance like this, if there is a faith background, or I wonder what things you're really scared about facing right now. I wonder how you might feel about dying, and let's talk about that, trying to create a safe place where they know that their fears can be talked about. Kids do want to talk about that oftentimes much more easily than as adults. I think a lot of times we're afraid to bring it up, and it's amazing once we start talking to kids. They want to. It's a relief for them to know they're trying to shield their parents or us as adults a lot of times. There is a lot of pain and loss and grief and suffering for sure, but we do hear stories of kids talking about angels and of kids talking about a presence in the room when we look around and it's just me and a nurse and nobody else. Kids sharing stories that we know have to be only from God. And had a lot of anger, a lot of bitterness, and just thinking, God, like, again, just countless kids suffering and dying, and wondering, how am I wrestling with this? How am I putting this together as a believer and trusting, and then seeing kids still die, and kids that come from faith-filled families where the parents are doing everything right, and from a spiritual sense of praying and believing and trusting and hoping until the very, very, very end, and yet their child still died. And I said a few years ago, got to the point where just so much compassion fatigue and burnout that it was difficult. I felt myself becoming emotionally numb to some of the pain, almost a part of not wanting to get to know new families or new kids, because I thought, well, you know, I'm gonna get close to them and then they're gonna die, and not wanting to extend myself emotionally because of the fear of what was to come. I also, at that time, was a new mom, and so I had some guilt over the fact that here I had a healthy child, and yet these families were losing their children. Also some fear, thinking, how long is my kid gonna be healthy? You know, is it really just a bruise, or is it a leukemia sign or symptom of fearing that they would get very sick and that they might die themselves? And these questions of where was God in the midst of this? And did I really trust myself and believe in the God that I had believed in for so much of my life. Through that experience, I've kind of come to a new reality of leaning more into the mystery of God, of not trying to figure things out or make sense of this world that's so broken, whether it be kids dying with cancer or tsunamis or someone who's sexually abused or you name it. There's just so much pain and suffering in this world. That was just the suffering that I was seeing on such a routine basis. But there was a verse that I've really clung to that says, "Now we see but a poor reflection as in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known." And so the ways that God has spoken to me a lot in this verse are these parts of being in the fog. Again, before I was angry about being in the fog, questioning, trying to make sense. And these days, it's more about Michelle being okay about being in the fog. It's still hard, it's still painful. But more about having peace and contentment. And again, just really this idea of leaning into the mystery of God and the beauty in that, and just trusting in His sovereign plan, regardless of the outcome. Because again, the outcome isn't often what we want it to be, that God will be with us, that we can cling to Him, He will speak to us if we listen, and that He will continue to give us just enough love to make it through whatever might be ahead of us.